What does this next year hold in store for you? We're going to dive into today's episode talking about 2025 and what are some of the most exciting things coming for Good Advice, some of the things that are top of mind for me, as well as what you should be thinking about for this next year for your own business. Hey, I'm the host of the Good Advice podcast. My name's Blake Benz, and you've come to the right place to learn how to do business better. We don't do a lot of fluff on this podcast or theory. It's all actionable, practical things that you can be doing to grow your brand today. Before we dive into today's episode, I got a word from one of the incredible businesses that sponsors the podcast. Check this out. We'll be back soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all of this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. All right, so I promised that there would be one more episode on the year from myself talking about some more joyful content. After our last solo episode, I talked a lot about how I was feeling a bit down about a handful of businesses that had shut down in this last year. And in fact, even over the last couple of weeks, even since putting that episode out, I've continued to see businesses close or post about their closing coming shortly. And it is a bummer. It's a bummer to see and just know how valuable our small business community is. And yet to see these businesses not make it, it's definitely a pain point. But all that to say, I just had a week of vacation, some nice holiday time with the fam. And I'm technically still on vacation till next week, but I couldn't stay away. I had to do a little bit more content. I got a little bit of work going on, some deals that are still closing. And I wanted to talk about what I'm excited about for Good Advice for this next year, and also encourage you to be thinking about some things for yourself, for your business. You know, despite the year that we just had in 2024, which it was a difficult year, and maybe you didn't feel that with your business. Maybe this year was the best year you've ever had. In fact, for Good Advice, this was my best year on paper ever, yet somehow I ended the year feeling like, man, what a freaking difficult year. So it's interesting, that kind of duality there, I guess. But maybe you're listening and you're like, you know what, my business crushed it. This was the best year we've ever had. Things could not, have gone any better. And if that's the case for you, I just want to say congratulations. I love that for you. And I am hoping that momentum continues on for you in the future as well. But if you're like a handful of other people, where you look at the year and you say, you know what, man, this really hurt. This was a tough year. I have some encouragement for you today, and also want to just reflect a little bit on Good Advice and the things that have gone really well and that are going well for 2025. This is a little bit of an unstructured podcast. I'm just going to share some things that I'm thinking about, a little bit of the to-do list of some things from a business and entrepreneurial standpoint, like the creative side of me, the things that I'm thinking about. Just dumping information, I guess. We're hiring. I'm looking for a few different positions for the business. I have Good Advice. I have Podcastable. I'm in this weird situation where I have this SEO service, this marketing service that is doing fairly well in the sense of we have 5 customers that we're doing SEO work for, that are great customers or will be great customers. Everything is on an annual basis. So I'm excited for those businesses. I'm excited for those customers. And But I'm in a weird position where I'm like, okay, it's called goodadvicecoaching.com. This is a done for you marketing service. In some ways, the price point is a bit a bit challenging to the consulting side of things. It's a $7,500 to $9,000 a year offer, and I'm in an interesting situation where I'm like, man, I need to roll this thing out as its own thing, but I also don't want to be that guy who keeps starting businesses, right? So I need to figure out how to make this work with Good Advice. The URL address for Good Advice is goodadvicecoaching.com. So I've kind of thought about, do I rebrand Good Advice to, dropping the coaching, or do I niche this thing out and the marketing side of it is its own business? I have no idea. These are just things I'm thinking out loud, but all that to say, I am excited for 2025, looking at what is on paper. On paper, I have about $40,000 worth of revenue that has already been sold for 2025. We're 2 days before 2025 is starting, and we got 40K sold, which I'm really excited about. But I'm also really, I don't know, I'm in a weird place. I'm in a weird place because getting this last week with my family and not working, I thought a lot about, man, it's a nice feeling not having to do endless hours and, all this work to grow a business and grow these businesses. And man, we've come a long way. We've come a really long way to, making no money to making decent money, or at least enough money to survive, depending on the month, depending on the cash flow. But, all that to say, it's got me thinking about price point. It's got me thinking about the right customer. It's got me thinking about, how do I position the business in a way that can guarantee that I'm making more money and not having to work endless hours. So the hiring is part of that. I'm hiring a web developer, first of all, who's going to do some WordPress work for me on the SEO side of things. I'm hiring a video editor for the podcast side of things. And then there might be a third role in there too that I haven't fully figured out yet. So I'll keep that one closer to the chest. So that'll help a little bit. The other things that I'm thinking about, and this is where I think you come into play, I want to share a little bit about some things that I'm thinking about from Good Advice's perspective. And part of this, I think, will be its own separate episode, because as I was thinking this through and kind of processing it before pushing record, I realized, I was like, man, this concept is really its own thing entirely. But talking prices and price points, and it's funny, I've gotten so comfortable with my price that I'm just very open and honest with it. But so back in 2018, when I first started Good Advice, my consulting offer was I think it was a $4,600 offer. And I remember the first sale with that. I remember my first customer with that. And I think that offer floated somewhere around $5,000. Well, when COVID hit, I got into the situation where I think it was like the 30 days after COVID, I did like not a free consultation, because that sounds like, a sales pitch or whatever, but it was like a free month, a free meeting basically is what it was. It was, hey, if your business is struggling, if you need someone to talk to, no charge, I just want to help people. And that was just the empathetic side of me, of just knowing how painful it was for a lot of businesses. And oddly enough, this is a lesson to be learned. I didn't get any long-term customers out of that. None of the people that I talked to back then is a customer today. And in fact, one of the hardest conversations I had back then was a guy who, in that time we got together, decided he wanted to shut down the business. We're talking revenue, and he was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not interested. I can't do this anymore. This is too much for me. So we talked through how to shut down his business and shut down his LLC and all this stuff. Well, during that time, I couldn't work for free, obviously. Though I tried to, it's funny the things you do that you think is the right thing, and then you I guess it's kind of the concept of no good deed goes unpunished, but realizing after the fact the pain that I created for myself. So I tried to do this, I guess, as long as I could. And then there was a point where I was like, okay, I probably should like try to make some money, doing this kind of stuff. Well, so I halved my price to $2,500 to just be as accessible and approachable to as many people as possible during COVID. And I think part of this was like born out of that empathy of like, I want to help people out. But then I also think it came out of like, I don't know if it was like a fear. I honestly don't remember what my mentality was back then. But I remember thinking like, this is going to help so much more people. It's going to be so much more accessible. Well, funny enough, it didn't. I will say at that price point, at the $2,500 price point or $2,000, $2,500 price point, I've had a few customers that to this day, there's still a relationship there, or, still just really great people. And, I value the work that I was able to do with them. But once again, no long-term customers from those gigs. So I guess I had kind of like forgotten about that because last year I was like, man, what am I doing? Why am I charging so little for my expertise and my work? So I doubled my price point. I doubled it to 5K, and shocker, I didn't I didn't sell any less business. I mean, this is the whole and if you listen to the podcast long term, you've heard me sort of rail against the overly simplified, I can't think of the expression for it, but stuff that gets like shared and reshared over and over again about like knowing your worth and all this stuff. Well, it turns out there's a little bit of truth to that. So I doubled my price to 5K, didn't sell any less. In fact, I think I may have sold more in retrospect. So I was selling that, was selling the podcast service. I remember my very first podcast, the Podstart program, where someone wanted to learn how to do a podcast, and I charged $500 for it. And they're like, great, let's do it. And then I remember my first customer where they wanted me to do all the production for them. And I said, hey, it's going to be 5K. And they were like, great, let's do it. And then now I'm in the situation where, it's $975 a month to do a podcast, 2 podcasts a month for a customer. And I have a handful of great customers with that as well. So this interesting nuance around like pricing and the value people see in you. And, we've talked a lot on the show about how when you're desperate for cash flow, when you're fearful, you tend to undercut yourself, or you tend to say things like, yeah, pay what you can, or here's a discount, or here's a special promotion, or hey, for this week only, my $5,000 offer, I'll sell it to you for only $299. These things that are just kind of goofy and weird in hindsight, where the customer is like, well, why is it $299? Like, why isn't it just 5K? And I was talking to Damon Burton, a post he had on social media. I was commenting on, this is how I think of things, I guess, I commented on one of his posts, and basically he was talking about how he doesn't ever do discounts or promos. And Damon, by the way, is a big SEO guy. His price point per year is something like $30,000 to $40,000. Great guy. Known him a really long time, full of integrity, just awesome dude. So my price point is obviously much less, but something he mentioned was, I don't do any discounts. I don't do any holiday promos. Don't do anything like that. And I'm the same way. I've never done any kind of discounts or promos other than I just mentioned the special halving of my pricing during COVID. But even when times are tough, even when maybe the cash flow isn't there, I still, when I talk to someone on a sales call, the price is the price. It's like, this is the cost of the service. There is no, man, I'm feeling the financial burden of time today. So, let's cut this in half just to get the customer in. I just don't do that. I've been pretty keen to keep the price point what it is. And what's interesting from like the consulting side of it is, charging the $5,000 offer, the number of people I've spoken to who've responded with, man, that's cheap. Man, that's inexpensive. And really, if you think about it, 2018, 6 years ago, if I was charging 5K then yeah, it probably is a little, too cheap. So since I doubled it this last year, I'm probably going to double it again for this next year. It's probably going to be around like a 10K offer, something like that. I'm still figuring out the details of it, or I might, I don't know yet. I'm still figuring all that out. Another thing I'm thinking about for good advice is thinking about, these sort of introductory offers. I don't know if I just own like this is the one thing, this is the consulting package, but I do get contacted a lot for like business plans and things like that. And so I've thought about throwing those things up because they're fairly easy for me to do. But, like a $200, $300 like introductory offer, hey, I'll get you started on a business plan, best of luck, gets them maybe an hour with me. I don't know. Still figuring all that out. So that's what's going on the good advice front. I got to figure that out. I got to figure out how to fit that with the SEO side of things. And then with Podcastable, one of the things I learned also this last year is that, and it's funny because this is like the whole premise of my podcast class. I have this PodStart class. That's this, it's a pre-recorded class. It's a $500 class. And with PodStart, the thing I say over and over and over again is how many people quit podcasting. Well, I got into the situation where I was bringing customers on for with Podcastable, and then they would hang with me for a couple of months, then they would quit. One of the ways I tried to deal with that was I said, hey, if you're going to quit, because I was running into cash flow issues where I was like, man, I'm getting a lot of money one month, and then the next month, I'm not getting any money at all. Not literally, but very little money. So it was creating this real burden and kind of stress where it was like, man, this is getting kind of, and I didn't expect that kind of churn, I guess. But again, on paper, if you look at the numbers behind podcasting, it makes total sense. It's like, of course, why wouldn't they have churned? So the way I tried to deal with that was I tried to put into the contract, and also when I was selling the customer, hey, whenever you're taking a break from the podcast or you're done with the podcast, I need a 30 days written notice. So if you get charged on October 1st and you message me on September 28th and you say, hey, actually, I'm not going to do it next month. I'm still going to charge you for October, which then led to this weird situation where it was like, well, why are you charging me? You're not doing anything. Now, no one actually said that to me. This was just like the inner dialogue of me, trying to be a good, providing something worthy and valuable, and not wanting, my customer's experience with me is really important to me. And I didn't want someone to be like frustrated or annoyed. So I was very transparent from the get-go on like, this is what it's going to look like. And unfortunately, there was like a few customers that I had to say, hey, I know you're saying you're ending the podcast, you're taking a break, but contractually, this is what we agreed to. And they were like, okay, great. Yeah, no big deal. Now, I don't know if any of those people like secretly hate me, or I don't think so, but it just didn't feel right. It felt weird. So now what I'm moving to is for Podcastable, it's going to be an annual commitment. So when someone decides to hire me to produce their podcast, to hire Podcastable, it's going to be an annual commitment. And so, but with still the monthly pricing. So if you publish twice a month, it's the $975, and it works out to $975 a month. But over the course of 12 months, that's what something like 1080 or 11K, I guess. So you'll front load that cost, or I don't know, maybe they will pay month to month. I'm not sure. But all that to say, you pay for 12 months, but you have 15 months to do the episodes. So if you have a busy month, if you need to take a month off, it's no big deal. You got plenty of space to do that. But that way, I think that's a little bit easier in that, my best work is done with people who commit to podcasting long term, rather than somebody who, they try it for a couple months and then we spend all this time onboarding them and getting them up to speed and getting their podcast launched, or, what have you. And then they're like, you know what? I don't like doing podcasts. So that's some of the things that I'm thinking about to sort of solve my cash flow issues going into 2025 is, just being really cognizant of, how do I make my cash flow as not reproducible, consistent, honestly, and trustworthy, like knowing how much money is coming in every month. and then allowing myself to make decisions around those numbers as well. So, but again, this is where I think the advice comes in for you as you think about your business. So I mentioned I have about 40K already sold and done going into 2025. I don't know where your business is. You could have, maybe you've sold way more than that. Maybe you sold less than that. Maybe you're looking at January 1st and you're thinking, I have a big zero sign. I haven't sold anything. And I want to tell you one of the best, I don't say it's the best pieces of advice because I told myself it. So it'd be a bit narcissistic to be like, the best thing I taught myself. But I will say, for all the mistakes I've made over the last 6 years, which I've made lots of them, and some of them have been incredibly painful and have cost me a lot of money. And some of them I deeply wish I had done something different or had been wiser along the way. The best decision, or one of the best decisions I made, was to commit to learning how to sell. Now think about the Dunning-Kruger effect in that, we all, when we commit to learning something, we all get to that point where we realize, crap, I know so little about this. There's so much more to learn. And I definitely feel that in the sense of, I'm on my sales journey. I'm only going to get better at sales. There's a lot I don't know about sales. But where I am today as a salesperson is so much farther along than where Blake was in 2018. Blake in 2018 had, I've told this story, had just left his previous consulting gig where he had sold around $200,000 the year before and thought, yeah, sales is easy. And actually, it turns out I was, working for a company that people really liked that company and they were indifferent to me, right? So I told myself, I'm going to learn how to sell better. I'm going to learn how to become a better salesperson. And I'm going to really evolve my thinking around what my offer is and who my customer is. What does that person look like? And, it's tough because I can't even verbalize. Like, I think sometimes this is what becomes frustrating when you're consuming content, is because you want the playbook, like you want the verbatim, just say this, just do this. And I in retrospect, it's never actually been like that. There's been some good advice along the way and some good things that I've read and learned, but so much of this has been experiential in being in the throes of it and learning it face to face and having those conversations. I mean, the millions of no's that I got, why did I get the yes that I got? It's all been through practice. And so my encouragement to you as you think about 2025 is you have to commit to learning how to sell better. And the only way that you can really, truly get better at it is by doing it. There was a day where I told myself, I think I'd been watching like a lot of YouTube on sales and different things like that. And I told myself, I need to be selling as often as possible. I just need to be getting more reps. And that is what I committed to. I committed to a handful of things around that. Stretching myself in ways I wasn't necessarily comfortable with. And, not moving away from my core principles. I still don't do any slimy sales or used car salesman techniques or anything like that. But, meeting someone and being more, giving myself permission to say, hey, I'm the right fit for you. Like, I can help you with that. Even not having fully, taken the relationship to, we've been dating for months and now let's commit. Getting myself more comfortable in the first touch point to say, you know what, I'm the answer for that. I can do that. I can teach you that. I can train you with that. And part of that also has been getting really comfortable with pricing and, this is what it costs. And part of that also is inherently getting comfortable with people telling you no and understanding that some people will never be your customer. They're never going to buy from you. That's totally okay. You can't be the answer for everyone, but you do need to know who are you the answer for if you're going to grow your business in a meaningful way. So those are some random meanderings, I guess, for the day. Really think about your offer. Think about what you're selling. Are you selling from scarcity and fear and what could go wrong, just trying to stay afloat? Or are you really leaning in, keying in on a great, meaningful, compelling offer that gets people to say yes to you and can be the foundation for a truly meaningful brand? It doesn't, by the way, mean that, you have to have a service-based business or anything. If you sell a product, that's totally fine. But you have to key in on what your customer wants, what your customer likes, and how your product is truly different than everything else out there. Hey, that's today's Good Advice episode. Thanks for tuning in for this sort of last-minute podcast episode to wrap up the year. Wherever the year was, I want to wish you well. I want to wish you blessings on the next year. I am rooting for you and for your success and believing in your success. And if you ever find yourself lost or wondering what to do next, man, there's a lot of podcast episodes here and a lot of other great shows too, by the way, that you can always check out. So all that to say, we'll have some more countdown stuff for our best episodes of the year as we wrap up 2024. I'm looking forward to next year. I wish you well again. I'll see ya. Bye-bye.